So a few weeks back we made a video called Will the EU Collapse After Brexit? And it did pretty well. The video attracted a lot of comments, and amongst them were people laughing at the very concept of the video. The attitude of a lot of people was that it wasn't the EU who had to be worried. The real question to them was, will the UK fall apart after Brexit? So today we're going to answer that question. Will the UK fall apart after Brexit? Before we dive in, let's quickly remind you what the UK is. The UK is made up of 4 nations: England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Together they form a sovereign nation called the United Kingdom. The majority of the time the UK works together politically and acts as one country. For some issues, individual countries are given the power to decide for themselves in their own devolved parliaments and assemblies. However, for the most part, you can think of the United Kingdom as one sovereign country. There's a number of reasons why people think that the UK is at risk post-Brexit, but simply looking at the way that people voted in the 2016 Brexit referendum gives you a pretty good insight. When taken in aggregate, the UK voted to leave the EU, but when you break it down by nations, you can observe a difference. A majority of those in England and Wales voted to leave. Scotland and Northern Ireland both favoured remaining, with only 38% of those voting in Scotland choosing to leave, and 44.2% of the Northern Irish. This illustrates the differing opinions that exist in Britain surrounding Brexit. Some argue that this alone could cause the UK to fall apart, as different people in different countries want different things out of Brexit, and it could be difficult to keep everyone happy, resulting in some claiming that this could be enough to make UK countries decide to leave the UK itself. Most at risk of leaving the UK is Northern Ireland. We've made 2 full videos on Northern Ireland, one which discusses the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland post-Brexit, and one about the possibility of Northern Ireland leaving the UK post-Brexit. If you want to dive into those topics fully, there are links to both videos in the description. Northern Ireland leaving the UK post-Brexit isn't impossible. The Good Friday Agreement was a deal reached in 1998. As part of the agreement, one of the terms was that Northern Ireland would be able to vote to leave the UK and become part of the Republic of Ireland. This would make it relatively easy for Northern Ireland to leave the UK if they wanted to. But why would they want to? Well, Brexit makes life very difficult for Northern Ireland. If the UK is going to leave the European Customs Union, then there'll need to be hard borders between the UK and EU. Northern Ireland shares an approximately 310-mile border with the Republic of Ireland, which could make life difficult. It's not certain how the UK would choose to deal with the border, but it's possible that a land border could be erected between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. This would create huge disruption for communities and trade in the area. Alternatively, Northern Ireland could be left in the Customs Union and borders tightened surrounding the rest of the UK. This would isolate Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, but would stop the land border from being an issue. Both of these solutions are far from perfect, and both could even violate the terms of the Good Friday Agreement itself. Therefore, a large number of Northern Irish people are beginning to think that their best option might be to leave the UK and become part of the Republic of Ireland. To learn more about this, check out the video we mentioned before, Will Northern Ireland leave the UK after Brexit? Because of all of this, we speculate that it's possible that Northern Ireland will leave the UK after Brexit. Another potential candidate for leaving is Scotland. Remember that graphic earlier? Scotland also primarily voted to remain in the EU. Independence isn't a new concept for Scots, with the nation holding an independence referendum back in 2014. The result of this referendum was that only 44.7% of Scots wanted independence. However, that has changed since Brexit. Before Brexit, many Scots feared leaving the UK as it would result in them losing their EU membership. Something which is obviously no longer the case, as they're losing their membership regardless. This doesn't mean that Scotland is exactly rushing to leave the UK though. Given the uncertainty surrounding Brexit, some argue that now is possibly the worst time for Scotland to leave the UK too. In addition to this, leaving the UK may have an even bigger impact on Scotland than Brexit. 16% of Scottish exports are to the EU, compared to 63% going to the rest of the UK. Leaving the UK could have a major impact on Scots and their economy. This is reflected in polling data, which shows that the majority of Scots don't actually want to seek independence at all. Therefore, we'd rate the chances of Scotland leaving the UK as unlikely. If you do want to find out more about Scotland potentially leaving the UK, we have a video on that topic too. Again, there's a link in the description. So that leaves 2 more nations, Wales and England. It seems unlikely that either of them would end up leaving, but of the 2, Wales is slightly more likely to go. Following the Scottish independence referendum in 2014, the Welsh people were polled to see if they also would like independence, and the result was clear. The number of people who wanted to see an independent Wales was only 3%. After the Brexit referendum, this number rose though, with it peaking at around 28%. There's a good reason behind this shift. Wales receives a lot of EU funding. The EU structural funding that Wales receives is at a significantly higher level than other areas around the UK. As such, the Welsh economy will be hardest hit by the ending of EU funding in the UK. This results in some Welsh people saying that they may be better off staying in the EU, but the number of people in favour of this is very low. England could also leave the UK if it wanted to, and considering the size of its population and economy, it would have a huge impact on the rest of the UK. It's even been suggested by some that as England was the most pro-Brexit nation in the UK, that maybe it could leave the UK, and therefore automatically leave the EU too. This will allow the rest of the nations to cancel Brexit and remain within the EU, which could be popular in Remain voting Scotland and Northern Ireland. Despite it being possible in theory, we think the likelihood of England leaving the UK is infinitesimally low in reality. But what do you think? Do you think the UK is at risk of falling apart? And who do you think will be the first to leave? Let us know in the comments below.